it's still COVID time, which means a lot of you probably had a lot of free time by yourselves over Christmas, and we're all still getting jiggy with it, right? Like solving lots of jigsaws, by ourselves. I tried to do it with my family, but since they live 8,000 kilometers away, we did it over Zoom, and that didn't work very well.
No, now take that orangey, reddy, yellowy, greeny piece. Yeah, the other one, the other one, the other one, the other one. Okay, now move that up, up, up.
But collaborative jigsaws do exist, for example, on jigsawpuzzles.io, and it's only slightly heartbreaking to watch half a dozen people collaborate silently on a jigsaw puzzle on Christmas Day. Jigsaws were not intended to be fun, though. The original jigsaws, invented in the 1760s, were intended as educational tools. This puzzle in particular has survived since 1766, although the Kingdom of Scotland piece has been hiding under a rug somewhere for the past 2 centuries. Now, this puzzle dissects all of the former kingdoms of Europe into individual pieces. For example, in the southeast, the Ottoman Empire is divided into a piece for Asia Minor and a piece for Turkey and Europe, which I never knew existed with a name like that. And to me, it just kind of sounds like a tagline for a Christmas movie sequel that never needed to exist. Like How the Grinch Stole Christmas 9, Turkey and Europe. I wrote the script over Christmas, so I had to find a way to sneak a holiday joke in there somewhere. But on this video, I'm not going to be talking about the history of jigsaws. Rather, today on Chromophobe, I'm going to be discussing colorblind people building jigsaws, and towards the end of the video, I'm going to be revealing what I consider to be the ideal colorblind friendly jigsaw. First, the most important question. Do colorblind people even like jigsaws? I'm colorblind, and I am deathly afraid of jigsaw. According to a highly scientific poll that I conducted on Reddit, color normal people are 52% likely to enjoy jigsaw puzzles, while colorblind people are 59% likely to enjoy jigsaw puzzles. So the colorblind are more likely to enjoy jigsaws. That statement has a p-value of less than 0.5, which is not very good. But hey, it's a Reddit poll. Now your first thought may be, well, colorblind people are losers, so obviously they're gonna build jigsaw puzzles. And look, hey, if I were a loser, would I be spending every spare moment of my life on a YouTube channel with a few dozen subscribers? No. Clearly, I'm a winner. I'm winning. Hashtag. A question that is more demonstrable than are colorblind people good at jigsaws is, do colorblind people suck at jigsaws? And so we're going to get a little bit sciencey in this episode. My wife and I are actually going to have a series of little mini competitions to see who can solve jigsaws faster. So test number 1. Ready, set, go. Okay, so we'll chalk that one up to a rounding error, I guess. We should try something a bit more complex. I got another one for you. Test number 2. Ready, set, go. Okay, that was still a little bit inconclusive. We gotta try harder. So test number 3, ready, set, go. Yeah, so as you can see, we're pretty on par with each other. My wife beat me by a few seconds, but this either indicates that color blindness doesn't really have anything to do with jigsaw solving ability, or there are a few hidden factors that are lurking beneath the surface of these results, which we're gonna get into. Okay, I guess I need to take a few steps back, deconstruct the concept of a jigsaw, form a hypothesis, and then we can get testing again. At their basis, all jigsaws are is a challenge to find the correct position in a grid where a specific piece fits. And there are 3 tools that we use to try and find that position. Matching a piece to a greater context, you can match a motif or a picture through a piece interface, or you can match a shape through a piece interface. If it sounds jargony, it is. So let's go through these one by one. The first tool involves figuring out the position of a piece by using information that is not on adjacent pieces. This includes, for example, your general knowledge of how jigsaw puzzles tend to work. For example, if a piece has a flat side, then you know that that piece probably belongs on the edge of the puzzle. Furthermore, you can use the picture that is printed on the lid of the box as a reference to try and line up your piece into a relative position. Context also comes from your broader cultural knowledge. For example, the sky tends to be at the top of a picture, tree trunks tend to be vertical, and text tends to be upright. An extreme example is jigsaw puzzles based on maps, where you can use your knowledge of geography to help place a piece, such as when you finally find Scotland under the couch cushion, well, you know that it probably belongs above England and not somewhere in the Mediterranean. The ability to use context as a tool in order to solve jigsaws is not likely to depend very much on colorblindness, but I do have one theory that I want to test. Colorblind people are often noted as having a better ability to detect camouflaged objects, and the logic on that premise is that we can disregard all of the color information and focus only on the small nuances and pattern information. This claim is often myth-busted, but it's not entirely unsubstantiated, but we will save that whole controversy for a later video. But we can indirectly test this now with another competition about picking all of the edges out of a pile of jigsaw pieces. In this case, spotting those straight lines in a sea of curvy noise is analogous to spotting a camouflaged object. So, test number 4, we started with a colorful cartoon hospital jigsaw. And I feel like I took the early lead on this one, but after a few minutes, the count did come out to a pretty even 62 to 59 in my favor. Test number 5, we'll run that again, but this time we'll replace the puzzle with a black and white puzzle featuring the Eiffel Tower. So we paused after a minute and compared based on my previous observations, and I did have quite a big lead, 43 to 26. However, after we went until we found all the pieces, she had closed that gap into a much tighter 65 to 57. So it could be that my stronger pattern recognizing ability helped me to take the early lead at the beginning, but she just had a stronger method for scavenging the remaining pieces near the end. But I gotta say, I don't think that these results really had any influence from my CVD. The second tool is to use the image or the motif that is printed on the pieces to make a match. Now, adjacent pieces are very likely to share some kind of color composition or a pattern, and this is exactly why we print an image on the jigsaw pieces instead of just giving our daughter a bucket full of torn up cardboard for her birthday. When these motifs are highly based on patterns and lines, this doesn't pose much of a challenge to a colorblind jigsaw. But when the puzzle's motif is based on color, you can understand how a colorblind person who has poor hue discrimination would not be able to take advantage of the slight nuances of colors around the whole puzzle. For example, here are a few jigsaw puzzles that I would surely set on fire 10 minutes into solving. This puzzle relies heavily on my colors of confusion, green, brown, whatever. And as you can tell by this simulation, according to my wife, to me it essentially looks sepia tone. This puzzle comprises a gentle gradient between these two colors, whatever the hell they are. Looking at this simulation, without much changes in brightness over the puzzle, there's not much for me to go off of. For example, this piece, in my eyes, could fit in any of these locations just as equally.
Hey, that's the color of my eyes.
If you say so. Now to me, this puzzle just looks like a rainbow got sent through a wood chipper, and it's even harder because a lot of the butterflies are identical with an artificial hue shift applied to them. And with the protanopia simulation, you can probably understand just how much of a goddamn mess this is. Without any ability to sort through these pieces, I would rely on my wife to sort, and she would just have to give me little 12-piece mini puzzles to solve like I'm in kindergarten again or something, so cool. Now take all of these problems and put them into a single puzzle. Now, these are often called gradient puzzles or color space puzzles, and I can definitely understand why a color normal person would enjoy solving these. But let me turn on the Protan filter. Now it probably hurts your eyes. Not only can I not tell the difference between many of these colors, but what's not even represented by the simulation is that all of these guys essentially just look pure black to me, and really gives me no hope in solving this puzzle. What's black and white and red all over? This puzzle that I mentioned earlier. Now, I also mentioned in a previous video that Protan specifically see red as a lot darker than color normal people. And so this competition is to see if my wife can pick out all of the red pieces faster than I can. So test number 6, ready, set, sort, and she creamed me, 32 to 14. To be honest, I'm actually kind of surprised I did so well. Must be because I cheated, I guess. So we haven't talked much about shape yet, but just imagine a puzzle is cut in a way such that all of the pieces are identical, and you cannot use the shape of those pieces to figure out what fits where, and instead you can only use the motif and greater context as tools to solve it. One instance where this would be desirable would be on crossword jigsaw hybrids, where you want people to solve the puzzle based only on the printed image and not on the shape. Tessellated patterns where all of your pieces are identical pose some manufacturing challenges, especially when your pattern is a fully interlocking classic jigsaw style and your manufacturing process is a pair of scissors. So, to conduct the next few experiments, we're going to rely on a simple geometric self-tessellating shape, the square. So that brings us to test number 7, where we will solve a puzzle with no shape information. Now, we essentially just took this page from National Geographic and cut it into 20 squares, but it's still a puzzle. In retrospect, this probably was not the greatest picture to choose. There's a lot of brightness clues in there. My wife thought it would be good because of all the colors, but even if this was in black and white, I don't think it would be too hard. Anyway, ready, set, solve. So you can see here how my wife immediately starts with the inner colored pieces, whereas I start with the outer pieces where there's a dark object overlapping a bright sky. Now, in the end, my time was about 10% slower than hers, which is to be expected, but this is only the control. So, test number 8, we're going to repeat test number 7 with a puzzle that has the same cutting pattern, but with a different, albeit similar motif. What's new this time is the protanopia filter on my phone that we will both be looking through while we solve this puzzle. For me, there's basically no effect. I can't tell the difference, but for my wife, it greatly reduces her color perception. Ready, set, solve. Now this was actually made significantly harder for both of us because of two factors. First, the phone screen is just really small, and second, because the app added a delay which actually made it very difficult to move pieces around quickly at all. It was actually so much of a factor that my wife's time on this puzzle was 3 times longer than on the previous puzzle. Mine was also longer, but this switch was to my advantage, and this time I was 15% faster than my wife compared with 10% slower than her on the previous test. Not amazingly clear results, but at least worthy of a follow-up. Now the final tool for solving a jigsaw puzzle concerns matching the shapes of pieces over in the piece interface of 2 adjacent pieces. Your typical cardboard puzzles use the classic fully interlocking pattern, and this helps 2 pieces to stick together once they've been assembled, and also it gives a satisfying click when 2 pieces that are correct pop into place. When this pattern is in a grid style, it is called a ribbon cut. Now, generally, a puzzle maker wants every interface between 2 pieces in a single puzzle to be unique, and that's in order to avoid false matches, such as this one. However, at the same time, it's often desirable that every interface looks somewhat uniform, and this forces the solver to rely more on their image matching tool rather than their shape matching tool. In this case, the piece shape is only intended as a validation that the piece is in the right spot and shouldn't be used as the primary focus. These dies are actually pretty tedious to make, so when they have a die made, they use it over and over again for a bunch of different puzzles. This actually leads to some pretty interesting hybrids when you have 2 puzzles of the same cutting pattern, but different motifs, such as this bunny raptor, aka Jurassic Park 9. We really fucked it up this time. We've already addressed one extreme of the uniformity spectrum with the fully uniform tessellated patterns. On the other extreme of the uniformity spectrum are the highly non-uniform irregular pieces, such as this puzzle of the gerrymandered electoral districts of Maryland. Good luck manufacturing that. Most hand-cut jigsaws rely on a very non-uniform random cut, but they also usually rely on a pretty strong motif. A more recent example of a puzzle with irregular shapes and no motif is laser-cut wood puzzles where you have to solve based on shape alone. A more traditional example is the popular crypt jigsaw by Ravensburger, which are fully monochromatic. I also want to point out that I do know how to pronounce that German word correctly, I just choose not to. There are 3 versions of the crypt, silver, gold, and black, each with a different die pattern, and each die pattern being highly irregular, such that that irregularity offers significant context clues to the solver. Namely, the size of the piece, the aspect ratio of the piece, and the curvature of the piece can almost point exactly to where in the puzzle each piece belongs. A puzzle with no motif and highly irregular shapes would certainly give a colorblind solver the advantage over a color normal, right? Well, that's test number 9. Let's find out. I don't have a crypt, so I just took a little piece of sky from our black and white Eiffel Tower puzzle, which is essentially monochromatic and has some irregularity in the pieces that will help solve on shape matching. Ready, set, solve. Now I had a strategy here when it came to connecting these pieces. I would focus on first the tab skewness and the tab size, and then tab arrangement if I had a concave section, and then the shape of the tabs, and if I had a little... Oh, I'm done. And my wife is still going. And going. And wow, she almost doubled my time. Now that is a significant result.
Oh, shut up.
So through questionable science and a large number of assumptions, I was able to conclude that colorblind solvers can have some kind of advantage over color normal solvers depending on what tools a given puzzle demands. Now this begs the question, how correlated is somebody's enjoyment of a puzzle to how easy that puzzle is for them? Well, not much, or all jigsaw puzzles would look like this, and there would be no market for this puzzle, which translates from Japanese as pure white hell and is a solid white motif with shapes, 1,000 of them, that are as identical as possible. This other popular Japanese puzzle called Jigsaw Puzzle 29 also takes all 3 of our solving tools and subverts them as much as possible. While there is a quite non-uniform cutting pattern, a lot of the interfaces are not unique, and so any given piece can fit into several other given pieces. But where this puzzle really shines is by removing context as a useful solving tool. For example, we already know that the pieces are transparent, and so they can actually be face up or face down in the final solve. Furthermore, this square puzzle has 5 right angle corner pieces, and that means that there are also a number of straight edge interfaces in the middle of the puzzle. And despite this difficulty, people still enjoy solving both of these puzzles, colorblind and color normal alike. I can even enjoy some ambiguously colored puzzles if I am by myself, but as soon as a color normal like my wife starts helping me, I see that I am underperforming greatly compared to her, and it's aggravating. It's no fun anymore. Even though it's not competitive, I just don't like underperforming because of my condition. So what elements of a jigsaw puzzle do colorblind people actually enjoy? Well, one thing we can agree on is naturescapes suck. There are ambiguous colors, browns, greens, reds, oranges that are all mixing together. Gradients of hues that we don't recognize, organic patterns that don't readily allow you to match patterns through a shape interface. No distinct landmarks that can easily be compared to the image on the box. And when you see it like I do, I'm sure you can understand why I would probably solve the tiny piece of sky and then just go back to watching YouTube for the rest of the day. So what would be the perfect puzzle to give your colorblind grandpa for next Christmas? Well, this black and white puzzle of the Eiffel Tower solves all of those problems. In fact, some colorblind guy wrote a review for it on Amazon, which sums it up pretty nicely. For years I've had issues with putting jigsaw puzzles together. At last, this puzzle is purely black and white, and I am in heaven. Don't get me wrong, this is an extremely difficult puzzle, but it makes me smile the entire time I'm working on it. The patterns are repetitive and without colors. The process of matching up the bars in the fencing is very difficult, but that is precisely why I love this one. One caution, my wife absolutely hates it. She doesn't like the black and white, so finally I have my revenge for all those puzzles that we have built together where she had the advantage. So it might be perfect if Grandpa puzzles alone, but if Grandma joins him, she might get a little bit frustrated. My own wife, as well, very much dislikes solving the black, white, and red Eiffel Tower puzzle from the beginning of this video. So, dear normies, if you try to accommodate us, we will try to accommodate you. After all, we know exactly what it's like to be left behind. Sincerely, Protan. So let's break down the elements, most of which are implicit in both of those Eiffel Tower puzzles that make solving the puzzle much less arbitrary and more enjoyable for colorblind solvers. Include strong lines that run the width of the puzzle so I can use the alignment of that line to match pieces. Include distinct organic patterns that span many pieces to facilitate the sorting of the pieces. pieces. Exclude any strong dependence on typical colors of confusion for colorblind solvers. In general, just get rid of any pale, bright, or dark greens, get rid of browns, grays, purples, and keep all additional colors as saturated as possible. Exclude any hue or saturation gradients. Brightness gradients, such as you see in the clouds, can be okay, but it's also good if you only use pure solid colors. Include a very irregular, non-uniform dye pattern such that solving doesn't always have to be based on the motif and can be based on shape alone. And the perfect jigsaw for the colorblind, here. And I know this video has more Eiffel Tower than Ratatouille, but that's just because the Eiffel Tower is such an amazing subject for a jigsaw puzzle. Anyway, there's lots of geometric patterns such as circles or converging lines or even text, which make this easier to solve. There's a lot of repeating patterns as well, such as the lines in the sky, which make the normally least favorite part of the puzzle much more compelling. There are no reds, greens, browns, or purples, and while I think they could have used a few more colors in the puzzles, they are certainly playing it quite safe. There are no gradients, only solid colors, and on top of that, if we take a closer look at the cutting pattern of this shape, you can see it's highly irregular while not sacrificing on the fully interlocking ribbon cut that makes puzzles easier to manufacture. In fact, JB Designs on Zazzle.com, where I found this puzzle, has dozens of these puzzles in the exact same style, and I know that I would absolutely destroy my wife on solving any one of these. I highly encourage you to replicate my experiments and report your results in the comments, or if you prefer, you can just shit on my experimental method in the comments as well. That's what comments are for. I'm not exactly sure what video I'm going to do next, and if you'd like to make a request, feel free. This is Chromophobe.